I want my house back. I want my life back.
This is a warning for all of us.
People are going to lose their homes.
About the soaring cost of home insurance in Florida.
It's unsustainable.
And what can happen to hurricane victims who paid their bills for years.
As you can see, there's no walls, no ceilings, no flooring.
I'm Craig Patrick, investigating complaints of underpayments,
A check for $60.
excessive delays,
I emailed voicemails, never got a response.
and claims of doctored damage estimates.
How many times were your estimates changed after you submitted them without your consent?
About 80%.
The halls of power in Washington.
And they get paid for not paying claims, not for paying them, right?
That is correct.
To the search for answers in Tallahassee.
We've kicked this can down the road for so long that it's now rusty and it's got holes in it.
The next half hour will explain what's causing this, what the politicians have done about it, new proposals to bring down our rates, and how to ride out Florida's home insurance crisis. Several problems caused our home insurance crisis, and the first problem that state leaders press is fraud and abusive lawsuits. Typically, shady roofers find homeowners with aging roofs which they know will cost thousands to replace, and then they tell those homeowners they have storm damage on their roofs when they really don't, and then tell them they can get insurance to cover a whole new roof, often by suing the insurance company.
And frankly, they are stealing from every single one of us.
Now, some say state leaders are overstating the impact of lawsuits, which we'll dig into here shortly.
If lawsuits are the reason, why didn't farmers cite that as one of its reasons for leaving this market?
Second problem, location. These are the paths of known hurricanes since the 1850s, and this is the state of Florida. They're in the heart of centuries of destruction. When you follow the warmest waters off the Atlantic to fuel hurricanes, it leads this way. We had an insurance crisis in 1992 after Hurricane Andrew, and then 2004 after Hurricanes Charlie, Francis, Ivan, and Jean. And now the market is getting much worse because of a third problem, climate change. With each passing year, carbon pollution continues to warm the planet, making storms more intense.
We can expect a lot more of those high tide flooding events into the future, especially over the next decade.
And that changes the models that insurers use to calculate risk, and that is substantially driving up the cost of reinsurance. That's insurance that the insurance companies have to buy for themselves. And the smaller the company's reserves, the more reinsurance they have to buy. And as major carriers pull out of Florida, it leaves more comparatively smaller companies that have to buy larger and larger sums of that reinsurance. And then again, they pass the cost to us in the form of rising premiums.
Reinsurance is the number one problem. It is 49% of what homeowners are paying in their premiums and is what is keeping insurance companies from being able to stay in the state.
Fourth problem, our population boom. As the risk of living in Florida goes up, many more people are relocating to Florida, driving more construction in some of the riskiest parts of the state. Our population and growth continue to cluster along the coast and in areas beyond the coast that happen to be prone to flooding, because this is where housing in Florida tends to be either more desirable or more affordable. And the fifth problem, questionable insurance practices. Questionable in terms of how some of the companies have been structured. We're going to delve into that a little bit later. And in terms of what they pay or don't pay when customers need help the most. So this used to be a lanai.
Yes.
Completely blown away.
Yeah, it was real nice too.
Janine Laron can still see chunks of her Inglewood home scattered through the woods. She calls this one her storm chimes.
It's funny, I don't know when that's gonna fall down, but it's my chimes.
What does it do?
It bangs together, makes noise when it's windy.
And with blasted soffits and a wrecked roof on the outside.
Yep, just all exposed.
This is what Hurricane Ian did to her ceilings. They're splattered with water stains, laced with cracks, and breaking at the seams and nudging down as the slow pull of gravity works faster than dealing with her home insurance, leaving her frustrated and very scared.
Dad, I hope it doesn't fall down on me or my dog.
Look at this. It already fell down on her car before her insurance adjuster showed up. What did he say to you?
I'm gonna get you everything brand new. Everything's gonna be new. I'm gonna get it for you.
But this collapsed garage ceiling never even showed up in the damage report. Neither did this busted window. With a $3,500 deductible, insurance made payments totaling around $20,000. while a public adjuster put the damage at around $116,000. Then after our visit, insurance paid another $8,200.
We have a lot of questions. When are you coming? Can we get the roof done? Roofers are always at my door because they see the tarps, and I don't have an answer because I can't get any answers.
I don't know what the next step is besides.
Just down the road, Hope Conklin and her husband and baby had to move in with her parents.
It's a long time to be out of your house.
They're still waiting for insurance to approve repairs to their kitchen.
So then they sent me a one-sentence email saying, your funds request does not make sense.
She keeps explaining how Hurricane Ian soaked and ruined the drywall and cabinets.
I emailed follow-up, I called follow-up, I left voicemails, all the things, never got a response.
All through Southwest Florida, we found families still reeling from a storm that struck last fall.
As you can see, there's no walls, no ceilings, no flooring.
Christy and Steven Spaziani had their home appraised 10 days before Hurricane Ian because they were planning to refinance. That fell through about the same time as their ceilings.
This is at nighttime. If we're sitting in here, this is when I'm afraid a critter's gonna come flying in.
With all the holes and gaps, the flies buzz in at lunch.
Oh, they're all over our food. All over our food.
You're gonna see at least 5 flies.
And then the gnats swarm in at dusk.
Well, the no-see-ums were, you know, up your nose and in your eyes.
Imagine spending 4 seasons in a gutted house.
During the holidays this winter, it was freezing. Freezing. There was steam coming out of our mouths while we were sitting here eating Christmas dinner.
They moved to Florida 6 years ago, and Ian was their first hurricane. They heard that distinct hellish rattle that longtime Floridians know too well. That's Steven instinctively bracing the wall with his back.
I was just scared. Like, I can't believe what's going on right now.
And when it finally passed, they discovered the shingles blown off their roof and wet walls. And these large bubbles breaking out of their ceilings. And guess what happened next?
Maybe a half a day later, we hear.
The first one trashed this bedroom they used as an office.
Then 5 minutes later, the bathroom, the ceiling fell down, the walls started coming down, insulation everywhere.
They called a mitigation service who cleaned out the trashed rooms and then showed them how their walls and ceilings were still holding water when they cut a square where there was no bubble.
And when they cut it out, that water just came gushing down.
The insulation hit the floor like a sponge and the water just splattered everywhere.
They filed a home insurance claim and an adjuster showed up, and then Chrissy said a month passed with no follow-up.
I called and the woman said to me, I'm looking at the pictures of your claim. She said, and to me, this is clear insurance fraud. To me, you and your husband are creating additional damage to this home.
I want you to both look me straight in the eyes. In the course of putting up the plywood and the shutters, did you also climb on top of the roof and rip it off in advance of the storm?
No,
sir.
No.
No, sir.
So they hired an attorney and got used to living with flies.
And then she said to me, and another thing, forget about paying your roof. I don't have any pictures of your roof prior to damage.
Again, they had that documented and photographed from that refinance appraisal 10 days before the storm and submitted pictures. Insurance eventually paid around $65,000, but a public adjuster put repair costs at around $200,000. And the mortgage company's holding that $60,000 in escrow until a contractor signs a repair contract. The Spazianis say no licensed contractor will agree to fix their damage at that price.
How can I hire anybody?
And their attorney, Donnie Worrell, says this is not unusual.
This seems to be more the rule than the exception at this point. I've got 60 or 70 of these exactly like the Spazianis.
And some licensed adjusters who work for other insurance companies say they've seen how other homeowners get burned.
They've deleted reports of hurricane-specific damages, line items related to hurricane damages, dollar amounts, and photographic evidence of damages from the documents I submitted in my claims.
Jordan Lee said insurers retained him to assess their customers' home damage and then erased damage he found.
And then send those manipulated documents to the policy holders, drastically reducing their payouts with my name on it.
Adjuster Ben Mandel also estimated Hurricane Ian damage on behalf of insurance companies.
The scheme was repeated over and over again, not only on my estimates, but on estimates written by other adjusters.
How many times were your estimates changed after you submitted them without your consent?
About 80%.
Why do you think they were changing your reports?
Obviously, to cut the payments down so they wouldn't have to pay the claims.
Here's an example we obtained from a source. The insurer's field adjuster found more than $37,000 in storm damage. Then the homeowner received this version of the adjuster's report, knocking the damage down to around $2,500.
They've got to stop changing our estimates or leaving our names on them, and they're just taking stuff out for no reason.
Well, that did catch state lawmakers' attention, and they passed a bill requiring insurers to document any revisions to their adjusters' reports, and they also stepped up fines for violating state codes. But consumer watchdogs say we still need more oversight and transparency. Coming up, we'll investigate how some companies paid out large executive bonuses and fees to their sister companies just before they failed. We have audits that show how some home insurance companies failed years ago, and with the insurance issues now after Hurricane Ian, it's all driving calls for more oversight. This home in Punta Gorda is still unlivable. Hurricane Ian ripped off the roof and then soaked the floors and walls with rain and slop.
I got a tarp on it within a week. I had a dehumidifier in the house to try to prevent mold from growing.
But mold still took off, and insurance denied her claim for mold damage on grounds she should have done more to prevent it.
How was I neglectful? Well, this isn't the end of it. Just write a letter is all I got from him.
Meanwhile, in Inglewood, this home had $1 million of insurance coverage and still has a busted roof.
They sent us a check for $60.
Because they had a $9,000 deductible and an insurance company that said they could patch the roof, even though the tiles may not match because the company that made those tiles went out of business years ago.
They're holding us hostage because if we don't fix our roof, we can't go to another insurance company.
Doug Quinn is a consumer watchdog who knows what they're going through.
Despite having $250,000 of flood insurance, it took us 7 years to rebuild our home.
In 2012, Superstorm Sandy swamped his home in New Jersey and cracked the foundation. But his insurance said that wasn't from the movement of water, but rather the movement of soil.
Fundamental shifting of the supporting soils, therefore exclusion of coverage.
That coincided with the rush of floodwaters.
And conveniently, movement of earth is excluded from insurance coverage. So they denied a majority of my claim. They paid me about 37 cents on the dollar.
He sued and eventually settled for another $130,000, and now leads the nonprofit American Policyholder Association. It promotes integrity and best practices in insurance and sounded alarms in Congress 3 months before Hurricane Ian hit.
And they get paid for not paying claims, not for paying them, right?
That is correct.
It's unconscionable.
Quinn cites 3 problems. The first relates to the process. High turnover during disasters can drive excessive claim delays.
And then you call back the next day and they're gone. And you're with somebody who's starting from scratch.
And after disasters, many companies rely on vendors who compete for those third-party contracts with the insurers. Quinn said that can lead to problems with some of them.
And they have this check writer bias. They're trying to give the insurance company what they think they want, which is to suppress the amount of money that is lost in claims.
And he said that may explain how some damage estimates from the insurance company's own field adjusters got reduced.
Somewhere the original adjuster goes out and creates the report. He sends it up the line. It might go to his third-party administrator. It might go to the insurance company. And somebody along those lines is taking that report and removing line items.
Quinn's second problem relates to how some insurance companies in Florida are structured. After Hurricane Andrew in '92 and then the hurricanes of 2004 and 2005, many of the larger established insurance companies pulled back or pulled out of Florida. And smaller companies that don't have the same legacy and focus on home insurance filled part of the void.
You may have a hedge fund that is anchored offshore. They may even be domestic, but they'll own a holding company. And the holding company now owns 7, 8, or 10 different companies. One of them is the insurance company.
The insurance company makes money, then it pays the sister companies, which may be a mix of administrators, adjusting firms, reinsurance firms, and/or restoration companies, moving money from the insurance business where there are caps on profits, strict regulations, and risk of claims loss, to its sister companies where there are not.
And listen, it's all good as long as you're honoring your policies.
But we've seen how a company like Sunshine Insurance paid its subsidiaries for duplicate services, and made verbal rather than written agreements, and paid advances, in the end paying out millions to affiliates as the insurance company ran out of money in 2014.
Their subsidiaries were invoicing them for services at multiple market rates, or in some cases that services that were not even performed, and it was just a way to drain money out of the insurance company.
Sunshine also paid its chief executive a $200,000 bonus months before it crashed, which leads to the third problem Quinn cited of large executive payouts as some companies fail. That's based on this state audit that tied Sunshine's collapse to questionable payments to affiliates. Here's one on another failed insurer, FCIC. This one states officers appear to have been stripping the company of cash. Here's one on HomeWise Insurance. It states the heavy flow of cash to its parent company contributed to its demise in 2011. We could cite others, but you get the idea. And may also have noticed that those audits are all several years old. Why don't we have reports like this on more recent company failures?
They would not release it until that insolvency or the bankruptcy was completely completed, which in some cases was 7 years. And then they would release the report.
And that can make it hard for policymakers to adjust.
It's important we get the information right away so we know how to adjust, so we don't just keep playing out the same tape over and over and over again.
The state responded by agreeing to release initial reports. And in 2023, the legislature drafted a bill that would have required insurers to disclose their financial stability, profits, and payments to their sister and parent companies. But they backed away from that.
They removed the clause that required transparency in profits of insurance companies, in payments to affiliates.
Which brings us to why and what more they can do.
Why was that provision removed, and how interested are you in bringing that back?
In terms of some of the things that came in and came out, we are also recognizing that this is an extremely fragile market. We want to make sure that we establish clear accountability lines for bad insurers, and but yet at the same time not do anything to sink the market as it starts to heal. So yes, I do believe we'll take a look again next year. And if we still have reports of people that are not doing the right thing, we'll bring the hammer to them, no question.
Coming up, we'll dig into other options to bring down our rates and show why some of the reforms are drawing questions and scrutiny. State leaders blame rising home insurance rates on fraud and a flood of costly lawsuits by repeating the same stats.
We have about 8% of the insurance claims for homeowners nationwide. The state represents 78% of all the litigation.
Well, that's based on data former State Insurance Commissioner David Altmaier mined from the NAIC. That's the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. It's a membership organization, which Altmaier also led when he cited those stats.
8% of all homeowners insurance claims are in Florida, and yet Florida had 76% of all litigation.
But some attorneys and state lawmakers and consumer advocates like Bernie Birnbaum say those stats exclude data and can be misleading.
There certainly was more litigation among certain companies in Florida than you'd find in other states, but over half of the companies had very little or no litigation.
What does that tell you?
It says that it's not an industry-wide problem.
Well, the legislature directed Altmaier to produce state research to substantiate his figures and more, but he did not deliver it when state lawmakers were drawing up the reforms.
We've been trying to solve a problem without the actual data to support the information.
And the governor and legislative leaders responded by making it harder to sue insurance companies. For example, the insurance company no longer covers your legal fees if you prevail in a lawsuit. Well, this can, on one hand, discourage suing over bogus claims, but it could also make it impractical to sue over legitimate claims, especially smaller ones, because legal fees you'd have to pay even if you prevail could exceed the value of the claims.
And then it can prevent the insureds from being able to repair the damage like they need to.
Well, the insurance industry suggests no longer offering full replacement value for roofs, but rather their actual cash value based on their age. But that hasn't advanced in Tallahassee due to fears that a lot of people could lose roofs after a storm and not afford to replace them. Adjuster Ben Mandel says there is another way to reduce disputes and litigation costs: roof endorsements.
It will reduce litigation, absolutely, because there's nothing to fight over.
You'd buy roof coverage as a separate part of the policy so that you and your insurer would agree on what the roof is worth on the front end and then pay premiums based on that.
You know what? We've looked at this. Your roof's worth about $20,000. You're going to be insured for $20,000. If something happens to your roof, we'll pay up to $20,000 to repair or replace it.
that eliminates the insurance company being a target for these bad guys to say, all right, they've got $400,000 in coverage on here. I'm going to go after the entire policy.
Well, Florida and some carriers are already moving in that direction, but Mandel said the state needs to add guardrails because some of those endorsements do not cover things like hail damage.
Because what they did, those are really not roof endorsements that they put in there. Those are roof exclusions. They've jacked the premiums up and they've taken out the coverage.
The state is also trying to stabilize the insurance market with billions of dollars in state money. But we'll show you why lawmakers from both parties are uncomfortable with that. And we'll work through more ideas to finally solve the crisis when we come back. State lawmakers are trying to bring down our home insurance premiums by subsidizing the market. But what they came up with in terms of how to do it is drawing scrutiny from Democrats and discomfort from Republicans.
It was a gun to our head in terms of making sure that people had coverage this year.
Here's the situation. The price of insurance is based on a lot of factors like climate change. And for a state flanked by water and Hurricane Alley, it's driving up the cost of insurance the insurance companies have to buy, called reinsurance. And they pass those costs down to us.
And is what is keeping insurance companies from being able to stay in the state.
So state lawmakers committed another $3 billion in public money to private companies in the form of state-backed reinsurance. But only a handful of companies tapped into it. And some state lawmakers say maybe that's because of how the state set it up in such a way that it did not meet the requirements that insurance companies need in order to get rated to cover most of the homes carrying mortgages in Florida.
Only 6 out of 165 insurance companies took advantage of.
By the way, the state already had a state-backed catastrophe fund that serves a similar purpose, but some companies cannot access it. And that's driving proposals to lower the attachment point, which in layman's terms means making it easier for insurance companies to access the money in that fund.
There's a reason why we have a backup plan here in Florida to do that. We have the CAT fund.
And while the home insurance market deteriorates, it's also raising more questions over what to do with state-run Citizens Insurance. That's supposed to be the insurance of last resort for homes that private companies won't touch. And since it's saddled with riskier policies, the private companies won't write, that could hit all policyholders in Florida with extra surcharges to cover the losses at Citizens. Well, that drove reforms to make it harder to get into the Citizens pool, but Birnbaum and others say Florida may want to rethink that. Instead, make it easier to get into Citizens because letting citizens take on less risky policies would make it less likely to need a bailout while private companies drop policies left and right and leave Florida.
If the companies don't want to play ball, if they don't want to write, then let's create not just an insurer of last resort, but a public insurer that actually competes for the business. I think that makes a lot of sense.
To address the excessive claim delays and complaints of underpayments and altered damage estimates, the state beefed up enforcement and fines on insurance companies.
It's a strong accountability bill that says you got to pay claims faster. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, the penalties are higher.
Watchdogs like Doug Quinn say that's a good start, but they need to keep going.
Having transparency on profits and payments to affiliates and how much the insurance companies' ownership and the holding companies that own them are really making would be a key part to not just making sure we have more resilient companies, but also to bringing premiums down.
And lawmakers across the aisle say we need to do more to fortify our communities and our homes so they'll be less likely to get damaged by wind and water in the first place. To that end, they've already approved rebates for homeowners who go through a process to bolster their homes and could decide to step up those investments. And if your home is currently up to code with no big problems, you could get discounts now by ordering a 4-point inspection and wind mitigation inspection, and then seek more insurance discounts as you continue to fortify your home. Those are just a few ideas as the home insurance crisis bears down on us. Of course, we'll continue to track the proposals and the problems and the action and the inaction in government as Florida's home insurance crisis plays on and hopefully plays out. Thank you for watching this special presentation of Fox 13 News.